It's a very good afternoon to the Sportsfan Radio panel. Back with our first show for 2022 and ripping and raring to go. And what better to look at than Australian Open? In the news for more reasons than we care to consider. Special guest today from SEN's First Serve, Roddy Reynolds. Good afternoon to you, Roddy.
Yeah, g'day. Hey, everyone. Nice to be here.
And to just introduce you, strangely, another lawyer, but that shouldn't surprise anybody who watches this program. You're a Melbourne-based lawyer who also works as a feature writer for SEN's First Serve and covering all things on and off the court for tennis. So might start the first question with you. I know we don't want to talk about Djokovic and the federal court and things that are happening this morning and this afternoon, but how have you seen the circus that has really sucked all the life out of actually watching things that happen on the tennis court?
I think for the most part, it's just really disappointing. It's been building for quite some time. I mean, Djokovic has been public enemy number one on our TV screens for the better part of 4 or 5 months over all this. And it's all sort of culminated in, governments getting involved and TA perhaps making some regrettable choices. It's embarrassing for the sport. It's embarrassing for the Australian Open, which is sad. And it's taking away from a lot of good news at the moment. Kokkinakis last night, incredible story. Bloke's 25 years old and he's already had 2 full seasons where he didn't play a single match. So he's missed so much tennis. Great win. It's still an Alcott's last Open. Ash is raring to go. It's just frustrating that we have this going on.
I read that the Serbian president said he's universally loved. It mustn't have been here in Melbourne in January. That's not what I've seen over the years.
Yeah. Look, I think for the most part, Djokovic has got the raw deal for the better part of his career. But he's certainly not loved and adored in the way that Roger and Rafa are. Perhaps in that instance, the universe starts and ends in Belgrade.
It's almost Shakespearean. I think it was the US Open that he just wants to be loved. And I think for the first time at the US Open, the crowds actually were showing him the appreciation, whether he deserves it or whether he wants it. But it's almost sad that he craves this love of the crowd, but he's up against a few legends in, Federer and Nadal, who might be just a touch more likeable, which is no criticism of him.
Paul, are you actually in Belgrade?
No, I'm not. I'm in Youngville, but just post-COVID. So I'm still maybe got COVID brain, if I could use that.
No, I just wondered. You sound as though you're in another country, but totally agree with you. We shouldn't be talking about Djokovic or the goings-on in court. I don't see how this is continuing to play itself through the court system. Tennis Australia look like complete tits. Craig Tyler and his board. I can't see how their positions go forward. We previously spoke with Brett Roddy about Craig Tyler being the tournament director, but at this moment he's actually the CEO of Tennis Australia. So I don't know how he goes on, but you're right. There's so many good tennis stories at the moment. We've got obviously Minaur putting some great performances at the ATP Cup. Kokkinakis overnight winning the Adelaide International on the back of a semi-final the week before. We've had Ash Barty win in Adelaide. We've had Stosur announce her retirement from the Australian Open, but will play doubles this year. And in all likelihood, she could become the number 1 doubles player in the world. Yep. And of course, we've had John Pearce with his new partner, the big Slovak. I'll stuff his name up, but they won in Sydney as well overnight. So all really good stories. And as you said, Dylan Alcott as well, but unfortunately, the distractions are off the court, which is degrading from what's one of the best Grand Slams in the world. Yeah.
I mean, as you said, long list of good stuff going on in the tennis world at the moment. It's sad that I feel like this country has about a 6-week attention span when it comes to tennis. 4 of those being in January, the second week of Wimbledon, and then a few days scattered here throughout in the calendar. And it's unfortunate that this has all been completely avoidable, and everyone's sort of got their grubby hands all over it, and there's been some mistakes made along the way, and it is unfortunate, but there's a lot to look forward to. I'm super excited for for the Open. You know, Ash is going to give us some great tennis to watch, and she's sort of the opposite to Novak at the moment. She's the world number one that we probably need, and to a point deserve after putting up with this. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunate. It's going to keep going on. There's a chance it doesn't end today, and it goes for, you know, there is a chance that he's playing and then gets ripped out of the tournament. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But, yeah, super excited for what should be a really good couple of weeks, notwithstanding this.
And Roddy, I think...
I'll just ask, sorry, you're up.
I think the positive thing with Ash Barty has been she's had an extended period of break. And from what we saw in Adelaide, I know it's a small slideshow, but her serve seems to have improved from what it was already. She's got an all-round game. I think, John, we've talked about it before. She's an amazing volleyer when she gets to the net, and she plays differently to probably everyone else on tour, Roddy.
She does. As you said, her serve is, I mean, I was watching some of those Adelaide matches and wowee, she was just putting it where she liked. The variety on her serve is something that not a lot of the women have on tour. You are right, she took a break. She didn't go to the WTA end of season finals, which were held in Guadalajara. At the end of last year, she decided to come home, freshen up. She's spoken about in recent weeks her desire to become a more complete player. From afar, I thought she was achieving that pretty well as is, but there's always room to improve, I guess. And
Roddy, it seems to me that she has in fact improved quite a lot. You know, there's all this discussion about her being a bit of a fake number one, mainly because there were no tournaments. She's gone way beyond where she was even a couple of years ago. And I just wonder, from your point of view, you follow the game pretty closely. Is it coaching that's changed? Because she seems to be an all-court player now. Wherever she's playing, she's comfortable. I just wonder if you've noticed a change and what's caused that change.
I think I have noticed a couple of things. The serve is obviously the big one. I mean, she's small in stature. You think of the big servers in the women's game of this era and eras bygone. You're talking Venus and Serena, Sam Stosur, physically imposing, tall, athletic women. That's not the first thing you think of when you look at Ash. She's quite petite in height, and so she's really improved her serve. She's using her slice a lot more. I mean, at Wimbledon, we barely saw her come over the top of any of her backhands. And generally speaking, on the women's tour, the slice is a really effective tool because it's not seen as much. And so when she's able to move players around the court, you know, take them down the line with the slice, she can bring them into the net by using the shorter slice, and which is, generally speaking, a position that a lot of the women on tour don't like to be at. They prefer to be grinding from the baseline. And so it's long been said that her variety is the key to her game, and there just seems to be more of it at the moment. The kick serve's working really well as well to take them out of position on return to open up the next shot. And so she's sort of exaggerating her strengths at the moment, which is like a lot of athletes we hear that, you know, there's no point improving something that you're only 50% good at, because if you improve that by 10%, you're only at 55. But, you know, 10% increases on bigger parts of your game have a bigger effect. And so that seems to be the case at the moment.
She also doesn't seem to have the game that's going to destroy her body. Sometimes players that are big servers, big power game, a lot of energy, they injure themselves. And I just don't see that with Ash. I can see her going through a season almost uninjured and in fact, having a long career.
Yeah. I mean, she seems super durable as well. She's obviously very meticulous with her preparation, her recovery and all that sort of thing. And you are right. Like there've been players in the past where they sort of can run themselves into the ground. And as you said as well, if they're big strikers of the ball, that can take a toll on the body. And Ash is she seems calmer out there. You know, she has more time. Everything seems, you sort of got that Federer effect where everything sort of seems like it's in slow motion and she's able to glide across the court. As to how one achieves that, I've got no idea. But she's doing a lot right, and it's looking pretty good at the moment.
I think one of the other things, Roddy, is that, and we've talked about previously, is that she also does play doubles, both the women's, and she'll most likely play mixed at the Australian Open, which for us is fantastic because it means you get to see her play more than once every 2 days. But I also think that goes towards the way she plays her singles as well. And you're right with the slice backhand, the ability to have the slice that keeps the ball low, but she's also got the developed one where she hits the slice inside out, so it takes her opponent out of court. As Judge said, she's always working on her game, trying to become better and better. Pam Shriver over the fort saying that she's, bless you, saying that she's not a worthy number one. I just found that, or she won't be number one. I found that hard to believe. Coming from Pam, who played with a sliced forehand her whole career. She's everything that we want as a nation. I hope she does win the Australian Open. And I think everyone in Australia would as well.
Yep. I think that the argument that Ash wasn't a worthy number one, I just don't see how that holds water. She's almost the favourite at every event she rocks up to, whether it's on clay, grass, carpet, hard court, whatever, it doesn't matter. I think that she's the thing that separates Ash from other players on tour is her consistency. We've seen for quite a long time now that the men's game has been dominated by the big three and Andy when he was fitter and when he probably didn't have a bionic hip. But the women's game has been more open for quite some period of time. And what comes of that is a lot of results that seem like surprises. You have someone pop up and win a tournament that you might not have thought was capable of that. But the difference with Ash is that when she has her bad weeks, she's still making semi-finals. And when she has her bad weeks, she's, scratching her way through the early rounds, whereas other players on tour probably don't have that ability to be as consistent week to week. And as far as her competition goes for the number one spot, I mean, Sabalenka at the moment has got some big serving issues. I wouldn't be surprised if Storm Sanders rolled her. I think she's playing on Monday. And then, Osaka probably doesn't, or at the moment doesn't look like playing as many tournaments as some of the other women on tour. And there's Garbine Muguruza as well, who's looking great. But I mean, it's
go back a sec though, Roddy. Go back a sec to Sabalenka. I hope that everyone got to see her breakdown. I was not in a good way, but that was sad to watch. Having played it and watching this poor girl break down in front of your eyes, I haven't seen it in a long time, if ever.
Yeah, not much more to say on that front. I mean, she's an extremely passionate player, hard on her sleeve type, and I mean, you can only imagine how frustrating that would be, and in part because her serve was never the weakness in her game. It's such a lethal weapon. It's got her to number 2 in the world. She's a massive hitter. She blows other women off the court. She's an incredibly impressive player. And so for that strength to now be a clear vulnerability in her game to the point where she hits 39 double faults across 2 matches, I mean, that's, 39 points. You don't need too many more to win 2 sets, 6-love, 6-love. It's really incredible. And I mean, she would put in so much hard work. I'm sure, today she's out there working on her serve. I hope it comes good. Tennis is better when Sabalenka's playing well. We don't want to see this. And it's quite distressing to see.
And especially when we start talking number 2 in the world, that it could just break down so poorly that she resulted to his serving underarm and the first serve missing by over 2 metres. So hopefully she's worked that out. On the men's side, Roddy, obviously we talked a bit about the women's, but on the men's side, obviously with no Djokovic, hopefully no Djokovic, I should say, no Federer either. Is it open for Medvedev, do you think, over the likes of Zverev, Nadal, and one of the great stories, of course, is Andy Murray's comeback?
Yeah. I think that it is open. I think Medvedev and Zverev probably have to go in as the 2 most likely. Rafa, of course, you can't discount him, but it's been a long time since he's lifted the trophy here at Melbourne Park. He's only done it once. He did win the lead-in tournament against Maxime Cressy last week, but I feel like it's been a while since Nadal's been or looked like he was going to take out the event here. Like, even when he has made finals, he's come up against Novak and Roger, who have been unstoppable. So for me, I feel like Zverev and Medvedev are the ones. Medvedev did have a long winning streak over Zverev until the ATP Tour finals to end the year. Zverev was able to reverse that and get the win. So I think it does come down to those 2. Tsitsipas hasn't quite been the same since the French Open. Although he's got a lot of Greek support here in Melbourne, so he could turn the tide there. But Medvedev and Zverev are the 2, I think.
Roddy, Kuna mentioned a name from the past, Andy Murray. To be honest, I'd sort of forgotten about Andy. I think he's about 35 years of age. Can you just bring us up to speed with what he's been doing, say, in the last 3 years or so? And he won at the tournament yesterday, so he's clearly in form. Just wonder what he's been doing and what do you think his chances are?
Yeah, so I think it was 3 years ago at the 2019 Open here. Andy lost in 5 sets to Bautista Agut, I think, in the first round. He had that emotional press conference where he thought that might be the end for him. Thankfully for us tennis fans, that wasn't the case. He's gone on, since then, he's had like serious issues with his hips. He's got 2 metal hips at the moment, which is not something you associate with, a world-class tennis player. He's probably one of those players whose body has been sort of worked into the ground, like we were discussing with Ash. So since then, he's obviously undergone like some pretty serious medical treatment and surgeries and the like. He's found his way back into a bit of, he's found his way back into a space where he feels like he can compete and his body allows him to do that. I know that surgery and the metal hip was a last resort. And so for the most part, he's sort of been building his ranking up, although he hasn't played enough events and he's sort of struggled a bit to get through some bigger names. And with the lower ranking comes the difficulty of when you enter a tournament, you could come up against Novak in the first round or whatever. And so for the better part of last year, he was sort of getting wins against the sort of people you might expect him to beat, the 60 in the world, the 70 in the world, that sort of thing. But he's now sort of got to a point where he's starting to break through. He's getting wins over bigger names, whereas each time he was sort of falling when he might come up against the 20th in the world or what have you. And so this week just gone looks like a really big step forward for him. He's on 46 titles in his career. I know he's trying to get to 50, which is like a big goal for him. And as to whether he could do it or, have a big run at Melbourne Park, possibly. I think that he's probably a guy that needs to remain fresher than some of his competitors at the moment, just because of the toll that this, that playing has on him at the moment at his age with his medical history. I think if a draw opened up, got a bit lucky, we could see him make a run, 4th round, quarterfinal sort of thing. I don't think that we'll see him in a Grand Slam final again, but I'd love to be proven wrong. And we love him here in Melbourne. He's come so close so many times. So perhaps he can get lucky, draw open up and get on a run.
He's one of those misunderstood players, I think. You see him as this sort of grumpy prick that is boring, he's angry. He used to go off at his mum when she was watching him in the tournament box. But at the end of the day, I think you've now seen he'd feel privileged to be a player. He's starting to give it back in his charities and everything off the court. But the way he plays, he's a grinder. He relies on being a defensive player. And last night he played the good luck story from 12 months ago, a bloke that had to borrow clothes from everyone else, Aslan Karatsev. And 12 months on, he was the number 1 seed in Sydney, and he's now won that tournament. So the problem with Andy was that he just got hit off the court last night, and unfortunately he's going to have to probably do the defensive side of it at the Australian Open on rebound days, whatever, or flexi putt, whatever the surface is these days, which just absolutely destroys the body.
Yep, all true. As to Andy's personality, I think you are right. He's long been perhaps misunderstood. He's seen as a very funny guy. I know that a lot of the Aussie boys love him. They think he's been a great mentor, and he's great around the tour. Of course, on court, Andy gets the best out of himself by, he might be yelling at his box or cursing at himself, things like that. But if that's what an elite athlete needs to do to be their best version, then so be it. He has, there's a doco out on Amazon that details, I think it's the 2019 season for Andy, where he's going through his battles with his physical fitness and all that sort of thing. And that gives you a really good insight into what he's like as a person. He's caring, he's kind. Who he is on court is not necessarily who he is off court. The issue with Karatsev last night, he just got blown off the court, and Andy's going to face Nicholas Basilashvili in the first round. He played him in Sydney, 3 very tight, grueling sets. They played at Wimbledon last year, 4 very tight, grueling sets. And that's the thing with Andy. He might be able to get through one match, and he's got that fight in him. He will find a way to get through the first round and maybe the second round, but it's backing it up, match after match, 5 sets, 4 sets each time. That's the challenge for where Andy's at the moment.
I can understand he had to get the mum out of the box early in the career because you miss a forehand's hard enough, but then you've got your mum in the box staring you down as your coach. So she had to go. That leads into a sad story of the week, and I don't want to talk too much off-field stuff or off-court stuff with Bernie Tomic. It might surprise some of the panellists, but I had quite a bit of sympathy for the overbearing side of his father. And then you've got the flip side of that, the Richard Williams movie coming out, which is supposed to be amazing, how inspiring he was. Can you tell me whether the role of these overbearing parents is dropping off as the sport gets more professional? I mean, I think Tennis Australia, the former head, put his hand up and said, we couldn't stop Tomic Sr. If he wanted to railroad his son's career, what could we do? And that's probably right, is the father-son or father-daughter relationship with Yelena, for instance, is quite powerful. Are you seeing less of that where parents are being more controlling and they're leaving it to the experts?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think tennis gets a bad rap because it's seen as the gentleman's sport and all that sort of thing. So as soon as there's a story or a headline that deviates from that, it can paint the sport in a bad picture on that front. But I think that, Tennis Australia in particular would have learned a lot through the Tomic years, but also the Jelena Dokic years. That's been detailed at length in her book, which is quite confronting. I think that tennis for some people around the world is an opportunity to change the narrative for their family. So you might have people who grow up in areas where, we're fortunate enough to have been born in Australia. I presume I can speak for the panel on that behalf. But, some people are born in areas that aren't as fortunate, and tennis is at the very apex of the sport, is very lucrative. I mean, if you're outside the top 100, it's a different story. But if you can get, top 5, top 10 in the world, you are making some astonishing money. And so for some people, the opportunity that presents can, I guess, bring out the worst in them. Parents can be demanding, they can be ruthless. To a point, I'm sure there's an element of love in all of it, but it can bring out the worst. I think that will always be there when you've got so many people, or with a large number of people, there's always going to be a percentage of people that behave in that manner, and so it's probably never going to be eradicated, I don't think, especially when it's so lucrative. And I think Federer made $9 million a couple of years ago on his prize money, but he got $100 million in sponsorship. So there's so much to be gained out there. Inevitably, there will be always some demonstrative parents, but hopefully, as the sport evolves and continues to get more and more professional, there are more support systems and mechanisms in place to protect players who are children from that sort of stuff.
I think
Williams sisters, when the Williams sisters were kids, they had bullets sailing over their heads like they were Snoop Dogg or something in Compton. So what made them achieve their potential was having a positive influence. Whereas you've got your Yelenas, even Agassi hated tennis, he did all right. But it is good that there's less of that, it seems to be, in the modern game.
Yeah, and it's across all sports as well. Like it's repeated frequently in AFL football that the style of coaching has moved from, yelling and berating to, they use phrases like love and empathy, passion, compassion. Like sport is probably evolving that way, and hopefully it continues to do so. I think a more positive environment, can only bring the best out of people.
Roddy, can I just ask you about the doubles competition? Firstly, do you see doubles playing a long-term role in Grand Slam tennis? And secondly, what do the players think about it? It seems to me like we really don't talk much about the men's, women's doubles and the mixed doubles. And I just wonder whether it's still a serious part of the sport or a bit of a sideshow at the moment.
Personally, I'm a huge fan. I often find that, especially live, going to a good quality doubles game is more exciting. I mean, it's fast, you've got quick hands at the net, lots of volleys. I think that it can be a much more exciting spectacle, especially for, the neutral fan. What we have sort of noticed in the last few years is, or especially in the last couple of years, is there's probably more of a divide between those that play singles and play doubles. And that's because of the physical toll it takes to get through a Grand Slam. I don't think we're necessarily going to see, players like Novak or Medvedev, Zverev, they're not going to be really signing up for doubles. Stefanos Tsitsipas does a bit of charity work by getting his brother a wild card into a few of the big events as a doubles pairing, but that often doesn't last too long. Most of the top doubles players at the moment are in their 30s. And so It's probably showing that it takes a while to hone your craft on the doubles court, because it's less about brute strength and power and, you know, precision, accuracy, the tactical nous of it all. I think mixed doubles might be a different story, but I think generally speaking, the men's and women's doubles will have a long future at the Grand Slam events. We're not seeing necessarily the household names in these events, but for those that follow the sport, you know, these men and women are stars, and they're exceptional at what they do.
Because what we always, sorry, Roddy, just what in relation to, say, Margaret Court, we always talk about the 24 titles and Serena's trying to match it. She won 64 majors, and nobody knows or talks about that. But if we're going to say that majors are majors are majors, well, she's won 64 major titles, and that'll never get beaten. And I just think it's, I'm with you on doubles. I think it's a fantastic aspect of the sport, but I just feel that the media don't pay attention to it, and eventually the tour will drop it off. So I think it's a shame.
The interesting part, though, Judge, is that as Australians, our success at doubles is unparalleled.
Extraordinary.
We had the Woodies change the way doubles was played. You've now had the Bryan brothers dominate for years, and again, they probably changed the way doubles was played. And now you're seeing different combinations take up the top 10, like the guys, Matic, and you've had Suarez, you've got the big Brazilian, who's 53 or something. You've got the Indian Bapana, who has more grey hair than I do. But the way they play doubles is so different, and it's amazing to watch. I think I'd be interested in Roddy's comments on the ATP Cup, and the back end of that tournament with the doubles was unbelievable. Like, you had Canada win it, but the two kids from Canada played the doubles. You had Medvedev playing doubles as well, and the crowd involvement in that was off the charts.
Yeah, totally. I think that, you know, when you can get, when the crowd can get involved in doubles, it just becomes an amazing spectacle, because everything is happening so quickly. You know, and then like John Peers and Luke Saville, they were amazing for Australia, and they're world-class doubles players. I mean, John, again, had a win in Sydney with his Slovakian partner. He'd had a bit of an up and down year last year, but he's come really good, and Saville is, 20 odd in the world in doubles as well. With these guys, we're generally talking about doubles specialists, and so they often don't have the singles career to go alongside it, which generally means that, they might not be as well known because they're choosing to specialize. And as you've sort of alluded to, the media does cover singles more than it focuses on the doubles, and so it is at times harder for the crowd to get involved if they don't know who they're looking at. They're like, sure, the names are on the board, but if they haven't heard of them, they haven't heard of them. But when you can get the ATP Cup going, and players love that event, they're playing for their nation, they love the team environment, and then you can get blokes like Felix Auger-Aliassime and Denis Shapovalov together. I mean, it's just exciting, and those kids as well are raw talent. So the more we can see of that, the better.
And we're going to talk about the elephant in the room as well, with Max Purcell over the last week talking about Leighton Hewitt. Now, I don't think it's unfair to say that Leighton has his favourites and has always had his favourites. You can see the way he behaves as well at the ATP Cup. Leighton certainly does have his favourites, but I'm not sure we need to play that out in the media as it's been done.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Leighton definitely has his favourites. He's got his boys. We see it every year when the wild cards come out. I think that there probably does need to be some attention on it, because there's so few discretionary unilateral decisions that are made in tennis that impact a tournament's draw or players' opportunity and things like that. And so I think that we should be wondering, is this the best use of our wild cards where they're going? I thought Max was really stiff not to get one. He had an incredible year last year. His ranking probably doesn't quite reflect that at the moment, but hopefully it soon will. But whether we need to hone in on it to the point that it perhaps puts a further rift between the two, I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing either. It's difficult.
I think you're right. The back end of the season for Purcell was excellent. he had a good year and probably warranted a wild card. But should the power be with Leighton, or is it more Wally Masua who should be making those decisions? And that may be the point of conversation going forward.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, look, Leighton does have a lot of say. Whether there could be a change of how these decisions are made, or whether they're subject to a panel type decision, that's for the powers that be. But Max was really stiff. He couldn't have done much more, to be honest. So I understand there's a bit of frustration there, and they clearly don't have the best relationship, those two. Hopefully that changes. It doesn't serve anyone for those two to be, at odds with one another. So hopefully that this all gets resolved, and we don't have to talk about it.
Roddy, where's Nick Kyrgios at the moment? As in, where do you see his career going? Has he peaked? Where's he at?
I think Nick is going to get out of his career exactly what he wants. I think that there's been a lot of frustration with Nick over the years, where people sort of sit back in their armchair and go, "Oh, if I had that talent, I'd work harder, and oh, I'd do this differently." Nick's just a different cat. He loves to entertain. He's spoken openly about he's not motivated, and he doesn't wake up in the morning thinking about a Grand Slam. He wakes up in the morning, he wants to have fun, he wants to live his life, and his job is hitting a tennis ball. If it just so happens that the public perception of what a tennis player should be is probably not with how Nick feels he needs to live his life. We're not going to see him winning a Grand Slam. I don't think he's fit enough to be able to play 7 matches over 2 weeks that will often go into 5 sets. And the thing with Nick is that he can get a little, I don't want to speak for him, but it appears that at times he gets a little disengaged on court. And what that does is it might allow his opponent into matches, and his opponents might get sets that you wouldn't expect them to get. And that draws out the length of that match, which means it's more of a toll on him physically, which makes it harder to back up for the next one. And so he's good for a few matches at Grand Slams. And I think the quicker that everyone is able to understand that we're not going to get Grand Slams out of him, and if we can just enjoy him for what he provides, then I think we're all going to be better for it. He's an exceptional showman. Maybe we only get 1 match at Melbourne Park this year. Maybe we get 3. Hopefully we do. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing Nick winning Grand Slams or anything like that.
Kuda, can you resolve, Roddy, a dispute between myself and Kuda? That basically, I think the 5-set concept is going to disappear shortly. It's really only relevant in, probably only the majors. I'm not sure the Davis Cup still continues with it, but I think it's going to die. Kuda, big fan of it, and thinks it will continue. Is that fair? I'm not misquoting you, Kuda?
I'm still for 5 sets at the majors. Yeah. I think what it does is it makes the tournament. It actually makes the tournament. I think the other thing with 5 sets is that you're still in it if you're 2 sets down. Now, some will say that the match should be over, but if you can come back from 2 sets down to win in 5, I'll tell you what, it's a bloody good effort, especially on the Australian surface and with our heat. Going back to Kyrgios, though, is that Roddy's right. If you look at when he won the Mexico tournament, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, he was hitting hot dogs and he was doing everything right that entertained the crowd. The crowd was so loud. Now, I'd love to see him open the new Kia Court, Roddy, the new the Coliseum, they're calling it. It doesn't have a roof, but if it had a roof, they would bloody blow the thing off. He's the number one person, I think, that tournaments would go after to get crowds through the gate, John. And he makes a good living out of tennis. Now, it may not be what he wants to do, but for 5 years, I reckon you just travel the world, get looked after pretty well, and then you set yourself up for life at the back end where he can work with his charity, he can play basketball, do what he wants to do in life. But he's had a pretty good life playing tennis and giving us entertainment at the end of the day.
Yeah. On the Kyrgios front as well, I mean, his ranking is now at the point where he's not going to be getting into top tier events on his ranking alone. And so he's going to need wildcards. And I think you're right, Peter. He's going to get them, especially in America as well. He's beloved over there. Fans just want to come and see him. And when you discuss the 3 and 5 set format, if Grand Slams were a 3-set event, Kyrgios would be a much bigger chance of going deep, because the 5-set format is exactly what hurts him. He can get through like a couple of early matches, sure, but when you got to start backing it up repeatedly, that's where he sort of falls away a bit. If it was a 3-set tennis, well, then I'd probably have a different opinion on Nick's ability to succeed at Grand Slam level. And so, yeah, he will be getting a lot of wild cards, especially over in the States. And I don't think he's going to be too bothered if he doesn't get one at Roland Garros. Whether he gets one at Wimbledon would probably require Tennis Australia to pull a couple of strings, I'd imagine. But yeah, he'll keep doing his thing. He draws people. He loves going to events, and he hosts, little days for the local kids to come out and have a hit with him. He loves doing all that sort of stuff and engaging with the fans, and it's great for tournament organisers. So as much as we can get frustrated with what could be and all that sort of stuff, he certainly plays his role.
The thing, Judge, with 3 and 5 sets is that the 5
sets... You can't let it go.
No, but if you have a look at the Grand Slams, and particularly the men's, right, for 5 sets, is who makes their way through the most quarters, semis, and finals. It's the best players in the world. There are not many variations to that. There's not many that come out of left field and surprise. Now, if it was best of 3, maybe you would have seen a player like Burdich or Isner or this new big bloke that America's rolled out, Cressy, or one of these big servers that just goes, or Karlovic might have won a major because he's won the most tiebreakers in history. But it doesn't. 5 sets does not allow you to be able to serve bombs for 3 sets.
Cooter, you and I are a generation that remember fondly the 5-set matches, not only in the majors but also in Davis Cup. It's really been they're the greatest memories we've had of tennis. We're now with a TikTok generation, which is probably closer to your generation, Roddy. And 5 sets, gee, you're kidding. All kids want now is a summary highlight. They have mini matches of the AFL where you don't see the whole game, you see about 10 minutes, and that suits them. I'm just saying that I agree with you, but in the TikTok generation where we find ourselves, 5 sets is unsustainable. That's what I think.
You'd have to draw a parallel though with 5-day Test cricket. So do you say that's going to go as well? Well, I think it's been pretty good viewing.
Well, it's interesting, Paul. You'll get a great crowd for the first 2 days. Good luck with the 3rd day. It's about a quarter of the first day, and it's mainly done for television now, Test cricket. But yeah, I think the same thing, that most kids aren't interested in watching 5 days of Test cricket.
Geez, you're boring. Yeah, what's wrong with you? What's happening here, Judge?
I love it. I actually love 5 days of cricket. Don't get me wrong. I'm not the market that television stations are after. That's why I think with tennis, I'll bet you once the tennis the tennis system is going to change soon. We know that there's all these talks of rival tours and whatever, and the Davis Cup has been sold off. I think the future will be 3-set matches. I just think that's what's the future is.
Have you been becoming addicted to TikTok like my kids, perhaps?
He's been watching those 2 blokes do the commentary of historical events.
That's right.
I think one of the things, though, John, is that we've tried various forms of tennis. Roddy, I can't remember what it is. I was trying to think earlier today. In America, they've got these little franchises that they play.
World Tour Tennis.
Thank you, World Tour Tennis. If you get a chance, have a look at it. But they play on carpet outside, and they've got a coach, and they may have Martina Navratilova and players like that participating with university students and then some pros. And it's quick, it's fast, but that's not tennis. We're not saying, so I still think the 5 sets will stay at Grand Slams. I can't see that changing. The Davis Cup is whatever it's going to be called going forward. Really, it's lost its soul, it's lost its identity, and you may as well make money on the way through with it, I reckon. And your Grand Slams are going to continue to be the tournaments that everyone wants to win, plus probably Indian Wells and a couple of the ATP thousands.
Yep. I think there's an element of truth to what's all been said here, is that we're never going to 5 sets tennis is never going to become. There's never going to be more events picking it up. Like we've got as many events playing 5-set tennis now as we ever will have in the future. It's only going to get smaller. So I hope it stays at Grand Slam level. I love it for the same reasons that we said before. Like one of my favorite tennis memories ever is Hewitt coming from 2 sets to love down against Federer in the 2003 Davis Cup semi. Like I adore that match. I think that the longer we can keep 5-set tennis, the better. But yeah, attention spans are dwindling and all that sort of thing. Hopefully there's a bit of, hopefully tennis, comes back in vogue a bit more now. It's become very popular through the pandemic, where you could only really play tennis or golf. The Netflix series that they're doing, that'll be out in 2023, is going to be really good for the sport, I hope. And it's going to start off with this whole Djokovic saga. So that's going to lead to a lot of eyeballs. And there's a couple more teams formats out there now. A lot of traditionalists don't necessarily love the team format, but I think that what it does do is it helps bring people who might not necessarily love the sport into it. And any new eyeballs we can get on the sport, the better. We'll keep the Grand Slams the way they are, hopefully, but if we can get more people watching Laver Cup, ATP Cup, the World Tennis Tour or World Team Tennis in the States, hopefully all that sort of stuff just adds to the collective pool of people watching and enjoying and loving tennis.
What a great way to say it, Professor.
Yeah, that's not bad. Roddy, I've got a couple of questions for you. There are 10 Australians in the men's side of the draw. We've already spoken about Nick Kyrgios, and he's on record as saying today that recovering from COVID's like smoking 8 packets of cigarettes a day. So I wouldn't have thought that even with his difficulty in playing 7 matches, he's going to get very far in the tournament. Who do you see as Australia's best bet on that side of the draw?
Well, it's tough. Demon is, by ranking, our number 1 player. He's got, I believe, the Italian Musetti in the first round. That will be a lot of fun. I think Demon could go, relatively deep with a bit of luck. He's playing some serious tennis. We saw at the ATP Cup taking out Berrettini. That was unreal. But generally speaking, I don't think that the Aussies are going to really challenge into the 3rd round and beyond. John Millman has got Feliciano Lopez in the first round, but then Zverev if he wins. Kokkinakis, who I think could easily be a top 40 player by the end of the year. He's, we assume, going to have Rafa in the 2nd round, provided they both get through. So it's going to be pretty hard for them. And outside of that, there's not a lot of depth. Like there's a lot of players that are, at a point that's good enough to get them into the event, but we don't necessarily have a lot of players that we really discuss when we're talking about who might hold the trophy at the end. So I think it's going to be a tough year, but hopefully, a few of the boys can win a match or 2, and that can drive them to bigger and better things.
Okay.
Professor, Channel 9's found it hard to identify an Australian male to follow. They may have put the curse on Popperin because they've gone hard with Popperin. Now, if anyone's watched Alex, he's got a pretty big game, but his footwork and most of the other parts with Alex is still a major work in progress. We want to see an Australian male go through to the 2nd week. Like that should be our minimum. But will we see a player get through to next Monday? It's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, I feel on that front, Demon for now, Demon's our best chance. But if we're going to crystal ball some stuff, Kokkinakis is the one, because we're not. It's not going to be Kyrgios. I just can't see a way he gets to a 4th round or a quarterfinal when he's consistently ranked so low, which means he comes up against good players early. But I think crystal balling it, Kokkinakis is the one. The guy's a freak. He's missed so much tennis, and he's only 25. There's still so much to come. Last year he was playing challenger level tennis for most of the year, and the year before that he didn't play at all. So last year was for him more about grinding, building a base and all that sort of stuff. Whereas this year and beyond can really be about cracking the top 100 again and then going deeper and deeper beyond that. And so, I mean, the draw for Kokkinakis this year isn't it. You never want to see, as much as it would be a thrill, like I'm sure he would prefer to play Rafa in a semi rather than the 2nd round. But I think that going forward, Kokkinakis is the one, and the Australian public love him. And so hopefully, I'm sure we'll see him on billboards and all that sort of stuff next year.
Last night, the win that he had last night, and John, 3 sets, tiebreakers included, he on the back of his serve and his forehand last night, like you've never, like everyone knows he's got the talent. Everyone knows how hard this kid's worked, how injury struck him down. But last night, so big serving in the 3rd set, so when he was knackered, and then the forehand. This poor Frenchman last night really didn't stand a chance in that 3rd set.
Yeah, the guy's a thoroughbred. He's built different. He is fit and looking the part at the moment. I mean, for him to do that after, the week before making the semis and then going down, I thought that was a terrific result as it was. And then to back that up with, I think he played something like 6 or 7 tiebreak sets throughout the course of the 2nd tournament. He's been out on court for a while. Like he would be hurting today. I would imagine his legs would be pretty heavy, but he's finding a way to get through it. He's doing it really well, convincingly. He's getting stronger as matches go on. Hopefully this is the sign of things to come. He's looking great.
On the women's side of the draw, Roddy, clearly we want Ash Barty to be flying the flag all the way through to the final. Is there anybody else of the other 7 players of the Australians who are in the draw who might get past the first week? I know that's a tough question.
Yeah, no, past the first week, no. I don't think so. Tomljanovic is probably our best chance. She's got Paula Badosa in the first round, who I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Badosa might be like between the 5th and the 8th seed. That is going to be a seriously tough match. Badosa's just come off, I believe, the win in Sydney, and then she also won Indian Wells at the back end of last year. So she's a world-class player. If Tomljanovic can get through, she effectively takes Badosa's seeded spot, which would mean she's got an unseeded player in the 2nd round and then a seed of lesser quality in the 3rd. So big ask, but big opportunity. So Tomljanovic is probably the one. Other than that, I don't think we're really looking at a possibility for a second weaker. Love to be wrong. I think Storm Sanders could really upset Sabalenka, as we sort of alluded to earlier. But yeah, I think all eyes on Ash and Tomljanovic.
Okay. And in the wheelchair tennis, Dylan Alcott, his last Grand Slam tournament, will he go out with a win?
Oh, has to. That man adores playing tennis at Melbourne, and the crowd adores him back. He's just loved, and he loves being there. And I just can't see these guys in the wheelchair game. They're incredible. And Sam Schroeder's probably the big threat for Dylan, but Dylan's taken care of him repeatedly, in the last year, 2 years. Like Schroeder's great, sure, but Dylan's better. And I think, playing for yet another Aussie Open in front of a crowd that knows ahead of time that this is the last time we're going to see Dylan do this, I can't imagine anyone's going to be able to beat him.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? The exposure that Dylan, and we had the CEO of the Paralympics on last year, and the exposure that he's given, one, his sport, but also the whole disabled, like that challenge that they've got. He's a freak, and as Australians, we just love him, and what he did at the Paralympics and what he's done for Australian tennis. I'd love him to win it, and that'll be played on centre court, or it'll be played in a prime time, and it will get the exposure that it thoroughly deserves.
Agreed. And for all the failings that are being discussed at TA at the moment, the one thing that they have always done better than anyone else is promoting the wheelchair game. And this year will just be another example of that. I'm sure as well, Dylan and his partner Heath Davidson will make the final in the doubles as well. That'll be centre court primetime viewing as well. And what makes those guys so easy to like is they get up and train, they work their backsides off in order to be able to be the elite athletes that they are. But they genuinely also love inspiring others, changing perceptions, all that sort of stuff. And, tennis for them, I've spoken to Heath in the I've spoken to Heath before, and it sort of seems like tennis is just a bonus, and that just makes them so easy to love. And I look forward to seeing it happen.
Roddy, a final question from me, and we're going to bring you back, I think, to discuss this and other things. Of the top 20 players in the world, 17 are currently European or Russian. There's 2 Canadians, no Americans, and 1 Chilean. I want to talk about this another time, but it seems to me that the whole axis of tennis has moved from, when I was a kid, America, Australia, pretty much. It's totally changed. In fact, you're really going down a long way to see an American on the list. We'll get you back, but I'd love to talk to you about what is actually happening in the tennis world, because look at the rankings and Australia's just nowhere, almost got no chance, you'd have to say.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is just a byproduct of a globalized sport now. I mean, years gone by, there was only a handful of nations, and that's why some people discredit Margaret Court's 24, or more correctly, 64 Grand Slams, is because she was playing against 8 other people from 8 other countries loosely. Whereas now you've got the whole world involved. But no, you're right. I mean, the Europeans are dominating. We see the example, or when it's really showcased each year, is at Laver Cup. I mean, Team World can't get near Team Europe, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. These guys are all bringing each other up along the way. It's an interesting discussion point, but yeah, Team Europe, or the European cohort, they're unstoppable at the moment.
Paul,
is the top American player the bloke named Tennis? Because that's certainly one of my favourite sporting names in the world. The bloke called Tennis. Is he the number 1 ranked American in tennis?
Sorry, what was that?
Tennis Sandgren, his name is. Is he the top ranked American? Oh, you're not many sports where you get the bloke named it. I don't know any baseballers called baseball. I'll have to check the records.
Yeah. Tennis is certainly a guy that can polarise opinion. He's not at the Aussie Open this year. He's been, although he has been on our TV screens, zooming in from his place. And I think I might be right in saying from Tennessee as well. He's
93, by the way, Paul. And my other favourite name is a female tennis player called Smashing Over, which I thought she was also made for tennis as well.
A bit in that.
All right, Roddy.
Paul, I think that Roddy may have also given us our bet for the Australian Open with the Alcott singles into the doubles. I think might be our bet.
Same wheels multi, you'd have to call that. Same wheels multi, yeah.
All right, Roddy, we might get you on this one. During the week, it was announced by the government that there was going to be a 50% cap on crowds. Do you think that's going to affect the Open in any particular way?
It's disappointing. I mean, I've got no medical expertise, so I can't speak to the need for such caps or all that sort of stuff. But it is disappointing. I think that the one thing about it, though, is that it's for the stadiums only, so that I don't believe there's a limit on how many people can get a ground pass. It will affect it a little bit. I think that some people are also pretty angry with Tennis Australia at the moment, and so there's not going to be crowds like we've seen before. Certainly with the current state of COVID as well, I think there might be some people choosing not to be in places where there's going to be so many people. It is a bummer, but thankfully the ground passes aren't affected. So hopefully still as many people can come as possible. And, TA's been spanked financially over the last 2 years, so they need a really strong event. Hopefully that's still the case, although it was disappointing to see that announcement.
Obviously some people calling for boycotts of attending the Australian Open. I don't know who that benefits. Certainly doesn't benefit the protest against Djokovic. But at the end of the day, let's hope that we can get some pretty good crowds in. The weather, if it's like today, be a successful tournament. And you're right, the ground pass at I think it's $49 is still some of the best value that you can get to go to a sporting event, which means you can go onto most courts that aren't ticketed, I should say, and watch world-class tennis, and that's both singles, doubles as well. So, it's always an event to go to. Understand that there are the COVID restrictions. A lot of people are still a bit nervous, but fingers crossed it is a successful tournament at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
All right, Roddy, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know it's an exceptionally busy time for you, but you've managed to carve out an hour just to talk on our show. And as I say, we really appreciate it. Gelding couldn't be with us today, but he's got some tips for us. Yarra Valley, race 6, horse 4, Mishika, ridden by Jason Maskeel, trained by Luke Oliver from Cranbourne. Another one he liked, but he didn't put in his text, race 5, horse 7, Constantino, ridden by Jamie Carr and trained by her fiancé, Clayton Douglas. And Jamie Carr's not out for many races at Yarra Valley today, so probably hasn't got there for a haircut, as you say, Paul.
She would have booked in an Airbnb, though, I'd say. It's, yeah.
All right, that ties us up for today just nicely. So it's a very good afternoon to the panel, and we'll